everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. I'll be very curious to know how the volume is today, because I looked it up and I was able to put a filter. I didn't even know that OBS streaming had a filter. So I put thank you. I'm glad you like my new shirt. This is new. I'm debuting it today. But yeah, OBS has, one of you pointed this out to me, that OBS has built-in audio filters. So I hope that the one that I have, I hope it's working, and not a visual filter, an audio filter. There's no visual filters on here. Thank you very much. But yeah, so I hope it sounds good. I Heart Movies still could use some work. Well, I'm trying. It's a process. LP, I did see the Bride trailer. I thought it was interesting that it's so much like, thank you, Maria, that it's so much like Creature Commandos from James Gunn. I'm curious to see how that does. I'm glad they moved it out of awards season, because I think that's very silly. I'm so glad everybody likes the shirt. I believe this is from H&M, actually. I think it's H&M. Yeah, I got it at H&M, I believe. Apparently this is very trendy. I saw this shirt when I was in Bloomingdale's the other day from some other companies, and much higher price point than I bought it for in H&M. You guys are so sweet. Thank you so much. My pleasure, Sadie. You know, I really am honored to be an ally. Okay. It still sounds a little muffled. Well, I know that I'll turn up my volume a little bit, but I'm nervous about the air. Maybe with the filter it'll be okay. I don't want it to be too fanny, because I don't have any control over a fan here. X-Men Superfan, you're always so generous. All right, so we have some really great things to discuss today. We have some really wonderful stories. I'm excited to go over them with you. And then, of course, as always, at the end of the stream, it's Ask Me Anything. Tomorrow is the final tonight is the Alien Earth breakdown for the season finale. Then Wicked, final trailer tomorrow. My Smashing Machine review will be going up this week as well. We got a lot of stuff going on. And then apparently Peacemaker will start to get knucking foots on Thursday. Although I won't be able to review it until Friday afternoon. Let's see how knucking foots it is. Okay. All right, so why is tomorrow a big gaming day, Oasis? Is there some kind of convention or some kind of presentation? All right. If I do review, it's PlayStation State of Play. That is a big deal. If I do cover Marvel Zombies, it'll be on Thursday, because tomorrow is all about Wicked. Okay. All right. Story number 1. I got a lot to say about this boy. Here we go. Oh, look at all these things to discuss. I'm very interested in this. All right, so Brainiac confirmed. Basically, I think it is. So this has been a long time fan request. We've been saying Brainiac for so long. And in some ways, thank you, WeSee. I think in some ways, I hope there isn't a Wolverine game trailer tomorrow. That would mess up my day. We'll see. All right. So anyway, we've been saying we want Brainiac. I think in some ways it would have maybe benefited the Superman movie that just came out to have Brainiac in it. I mean, I ended up really liking it, but maybe it would have made more money if it had a fancy new villain in it, but it didn't. So, but we've been saying we want Brainiac for a very, very long time. In fact, I think that the hype really started with Alien Covenant. That came out in 2017. And there was a flashback sequence where David comes to this planet, and that's the spores. He's like, release the spores. He basically just looks down and goes, what a glorious petri dish for me to experiment on. And I think that I, myself, when I saw this scene, was like, that looks like Brainiac to me. And I think at that moment, a lot of us could see Brainiac in live action. We were like, why don't you hire Michael Fassbender to do it? But unfortunately, of course, that never happened, but it was very Brainiac-y. So I want to talk, though, about James Gunn's announcement style. All right, so this is how he did it. He said, there's the script for Man of Tomorrow. He put this on social media, and it had pictures. All right, we're like, that's nice. All right. So, but I think this is not working how he does announcements. So it's social media versus a presentation. Everybody likes the presentation. I think a nice big complete presentation, like Kevin Feige used to do back in the day, are really the way to go. I mean, I think that, having people, I don't particularly like having to do it, but seeing trades being like, guess what James Gunn just tweeted or posted on Instagram is kind of nuts, right? Like, he doesn't even personally make these presentations. He's just tweeting them out like he's a fan. Like, they should have a little more pomp and circumstance to them, I think. And I think it's hurting the perception of them. Because also, slow rollout versus a blitz. If he just said, he could tweet out a video, I would accept that, right? So, I could see someone said he could do both, right? If he had videos that he would tweet, that would be fine. That's right, SMR Goose. I'm missing the event aspect of it. And James Gunn has proven to be quite good at keeping a secret. Shh. So why not wait till Comic-Con? I mean, I think he'll probably have cast the role by then. But it's just, if he had said, I'm making Man of Tomorrow, which is a Superman sequel with Brainiac as the villain, the initial announcement, I think, would have gotten more attention than it did. I don't know why he's doing this. I don't know why he's talking so much about future projects. It's 2 years away. I feel like maybe it's because Superman is still performing, and so he wants to give it the best shot possible. So go now, like, first watch Superman on digital, then go watch it on HBO Max where it just dropped. Also Peacemaker, as we saw on Sunday, Peacemaker, at least out of the gate, is really struggling in the ratings, which I'm sure is embarrassing, especially because James Gunn, when season 1 came out, claimed that it was a huge hit. He was like, it's really a big deal for Max. And we were all like, Max's numbers, we think, are in the toilet. He was like, shut up. So, maybe that's one of the reasons that he's doing this. But I do think that that's obviously a Brainiac hint. That guy's got like 2 weird brains. He's got a brain in his cheek. Like, something crazy's going on there, man. By the way, it reminds me of my Think About the Ink logo that I used to do, which I thought was pretty funny. So I'm a fan. I mean, obviously I'm a fan of this stylization, but for the love of God, I don't need any more Frankenstein stuff after Creature Commandos, the upcoming Frankenstein movie from Guillermo del Toro, and now The Bride, right? Like, I don't need any more Frankenstein analogies. Thank you. We're Frankensteined out by the time, he's too late to the party on that. All right. So I also think he has to contend with the current apathy towards Hollywood. People just, they don't care about anything. The Mandalorian trailer yesterday was a total dud. It was shocking. You know what was as big a dud as? Avatar. And it's not lost on me. Thank you, Nurse Brad. I love it. What a great name. It wasn't lost on me that those are both Disney, from the Disney studio. But Avatar failed to make, although both were shown, both leaked. Avatar leaked, and then also, it's true, it wasn't a great trailer either, Maria. And then Mandalorian and Grogu, they showed a very similar trailer to that back at Star Wars Celebration, and then the Destination D23 in August. So yeah, but there is kind of an apathy of anything about Hollywood right now. So I think it's a tough space to be in. So, which version of Brainiac are we getting? All right, so there's been a couple of Brainiacs over the years. He's been full robot. He's been like a man who looks like a robot, right? Hey, Bubbles, thank you. So that's interesting. So I think I'll be curious to see which he goes with. I have some theories here. Now, he's got some choices to make. Does he want to go with a Brainiac from Krypton or from the planet Clu? Right? The animated series made Brainiac the AI, the artificial intelligence of Krypton. That's right. Absolute Superman Brainiac is nuts, Paul. Everything over in the absolute world is just like, what are we going to do about that? But yeah, so Krypton, it could be the AI from Krypton. And we learned in this new Superman movie that James Gunn's Krypton is very different. And then also, though, he could be from the planet Clu, where there are a lot of Brainiacs. He's like they're like a robot race of artificial intelligence. So that's interesting. We'll see what they decide to do there. Now, there are a couple of ways they could go with this. Now, I was thinking to myself, hey, we already have some robots from Krypton. The robot assistants from the movie, one of them voiced by Alan Tudyk, who in Hollywood is Mr. Robot. He did the voice and the motion capture for iRobot. He, of course, is K2SO from Star Wars. He's very good at doing robots. So it made me wonder if perhaps, that's right, Dana O'Leary, that's why Ultron is right next there. I wouldn't be surprised if Alan Tudyk maybe was Brainiac. Remember Gary got a name at the end of, number 4 became Gary at the end of Superman? What if he continues to evolve and get more of a personality? I think there's a very strong, hey David Wayne, I'm glad you made it. That I think is a very strong chance that could be maybe the storyline that they might do. That would be very organic, and it would arise from within Superman's own fortress of solitude. I think that's kind of interesting. However, the only problem with it is that Marvel already did it. Where Ultron was Tony Stark's artificial intelligence program that took over one of the Iron Man suits, and then eventually got a more refined look, and then had a baby, Vision, which was another one of Tony Stark's AI programs. We're going to do Elizabeth Debicki, you'll see. So Marvel, of course, is doing a Vision show next year, which is going to deal extensively, that's right, with Vision Quest, Ben 10. Vision Quest is going to deal extensively with artificial intelligence and robots in the MCU. Ultron is returning with James Spader. I'm very curious to see what the story is going to be there. It's the Star Trek Picard showrunner who's done some good stuff with the robots over in the Star Trek universe. So it could be pretty interesting what they decide to do. Josh, Brainiac is different from Vision and Ultron, but yet is he? I think that there's certainly overlap. If he goes full robot, he's Ultron. If he's a man who's a robot who looks like a man, then he's Vision. So it's tough to figure out exactly what to do. Now, I have an idea. I don't know how it would be taken, but I like it. I think they should do Brainiac Queen. So Brainiac Queen was only introduced recently in the comics. I like that she has a human face on an unhuman body, almost like a mask, like a robot wearing a human mask to try and masquerade as a person. I think this design is fabulous. The story sucked, but the design was incredible. So she wears that cool cloak and she has that cool chest plate. Yeah, she does look a lot like the Borg from Star Trek. Good call. But because of the advancements in VFX and stuff, they could make it so that she truly doesn't have a human body, as you can see. It's really cool. Great design. And I like the idea of balancing Supes and Lex with a female villain, right? We're already going to have Supes and Lex who are teaming up to fight Brainiac. Wouldn't it be cool if they fought a woman? Like Superman needs to expand its audience. And I think it did okay with women, but it didn't do great. Comic book movies struggle to get women in there. And I just think it would be interesting. I'm glad to see that some of you are okay with this idea. And that's right, Dane. That's why I have Elizabeth Debicki listed here, because that's who I think would be really good in the role, especially after her playing Princess Diana. So there's a lot of reasons to hire Elizabeth Debicki for this. Elizabeth Debicki already has worked with James Gunn, okay, in Guardians of the Galaxy, where she actually kind of played a machine woman already. She's also as tall as Nicholas Hoult and David Corenswet. She's 6'2". I believe Nicholas Hoult is 6'3", and then David Corenswet is 6'4". So she's right in there with them. She would be equally as imposing as a Force. And I just think it would offer a little bit more balance to the movie. I think just having 3 dudes and then Lois being like, oh, here I am too. I don't know. And I think James Gunn can do a nice job with female characters. So I think it's not a bad idea. I mean, I know people might be like, how dare you? How could we get Brainiac finally? And it's a woman. I mean, come on. We've had so many Brainiacs in animation and comics. And there is a precedent now with Brainiac Queen. I don't know. I think it's a good idea. Oh, that's right, Nico. He did a horrible job with Gamora. But he's done a nice job in other ways. And that's right, Classic Bunny Librarian. Taika Waititi did a wonderful job with Cate Blanchett as Hela. So I think that there's a precedent for it in that regard. So I like it. I think it's a good idea. It does, that's something to be concerned about, Ryan. Perhaps it's too much like Thor Ragnarok. That's a fair criticism. But I mean, sometimes there are multiple Brainiacs. You could do Brainiac, and then you could also do. Oh yeah, that's right. He did Nebula, who is like Brainiac Queen already. I didn't think of that. That's an excellent point. Very similar. So let's see. I mean, I think it's a good idea. I like it. You think there'd get too much hate, ZMR? It might. It might, but I don't know. I just feel like, well, maybe a Brainiac couple. I just feel it's like a lot of guys in the movie, right? I mean, I don't know. Guys like a good female character too. Hey, Tony Romero. I think it's not a bad idea. Although the Nebula comparison makes me a little nervous. So that's what's going on with Brainiac. It's hard. There's not too much to talk about because these presentations are not, you know, it's hard. Like he doesn't give us enough to really chew on, because he's giving it to us bite by bite instead of a meal. That's a good way to describe it. I got to get water for my next live stream. All right, so what do you guys? Killer Frost, Livewire. There are a lot of really other great characters could be going with. So, what do you guys think? What are some questions or comments about this story before we go to the second story of the day? Mexican Nacho says that Brainiac seems more like a Justice League level villain. You think? I mean, he's really a Superman villain. Tony, I'm so glad that you've joined the chat for the first time. Welcome. Let's see here. Big Bardo would be wonderful. What about Wonder Woman, Andrew? I don't know. I don't think Elizabeth Debicki's a good Wonder Woman, to be honest with you. I think she'd be a better Brainiac queen. Hey, Kim says, do you see James Gunn randomly appearing? I did. You asked about that yesterday, I think. Deshaun Harden says, should James Gunn wait until after Supergirl to decide what if he wants this to be American or international appeal? Well, to be honest with you, I think he tried really hard and thought that he was giving the current Superman movie international appeal with that commentary on, well, many people felt the Israeli Gaza Palestine situation, which did become a part of the conversation around the movie. I think he tried very hard to make it seem very international, but it just didn't work out. Lloyd says, what are Brainiac's powers? He doesn't really have any powers. He's like he's like the synths over in Alien Earth, like he's very strong, obviously, because he's a machine. He has the ability to access the internet and stuff like that. The thing that he likes to do is to make shrink cities and put them in little bottles. I saw somebody tweet about how weird it is to explain comic book characters to non-comic book fans. And I think that definitely is a good comparison. Skynet, Maria, that makes it sound a little bit cooler. X-Men Superfan says, what about Supergirl in the film? I wonder if Supergirl will be a big part of the film. It's supposed to be the Superman saga, but does that mean the Superman family or just Superman? I don't know if there's really space for her if they're going to be focusing on the relationship of Lex and Superman having to work together. She might have like a scene or something. That's pretty funny, Dane, to say he's canning cities. And he's a collector. That's right. He's like Ariel in The Little Mermaid. And that's right, X-Men Superfan. He did collect the city of Kandor, which was the neighboring, I think it was on a neighboring planet next to Krypton or something like that. So that's always been a big part. And Superman, for the longest time, couldn't find a way to unshrink it. So that was always something that was sitting around the old Fortress of Solitude. Josh loves movies. I think they evolved it that he collects all different types of cities from across the universe or the galaxy, not just Kryptonian cities. But yeah, when it started out, he was particularly interested in Kryptonian cities. Ryan says, is this like Galactus? Well, that's a scary comparison because yes, and Galactus didn't really work out as a villain. I think they might need a secondary villain to be able to deliver action. And then the movie, I don't know, it was fine to me how crowded the Superman movie was. I thought James Gunn balanced it out quite well. But I know some people didn't care for that. Deshaun, I'm glad you feel the movie needs a strong female character. Ben 10 says, how about Jon Stewart as a cameo to get the Justice League going? That'd be nice. But they have to really earn a Justice League movie. They got to figure out what they're doing with Batman. We can't even talk about a Justice League movie until they figure out their Batman problem. Classic Bunny Librarian, they should not defeat Brainiac, like totally. I think Marvel has a real problem in that their villains never stick around for more than a movie. I mean, it's hard to get invested in them because they're always one and done. And I think that's a really bad habit that Marvel has. Although maybe James Gunn was behind it because he used to, of course, play in their sandbox. At one point, he was supposed to take over for Kevin Feige someday. X-Men superfan, I wasn't a big fan of Hawkgirl as portrayed in the film. So no, I don't have any interest. I particularly don't think it's continued well on Peacemaker. I don't think it worked well. Steven says, I agree about not making Lois the only woman. I hate that trope of only one woman or like, you know, like not seeing Sophia Falcone and Catwoman. No, yeah, I agree. I think multiple female characters is great. And to James Gunn's credit, he did do that in the most recent Superman movie. He had a lot of female characters. Faye, Brainiac does make robots sometimes. And an army of robots means Soups and Lex can go to town. That's right. Robot violence. It's okay. They're not actually alive. Although an absolute Superman, absolute Brainiac makes his Brainiac robots out of humans by taking over their bodies, like the Borg does. He's very Borg-like too. You know, I got to tell you, the more I talk about Brainiac, the more I'm concerned that he might feel derivative to non-Superman fans. They might be like, isn't he like this other character? And we'll be like, stop it, it's amazing. Jordan, I do think going with the animated version of Brainiac might be a good idea because so many people, of course, are familiar with Superman, the animated series. Oh, yeah, that's right. Tony, Dr. Doom will stick around, but Dr. Doom's a little Brainiac-like, too. Yeah, Christopher, when the heck is Poison Ivy ever going to come back? She's so popular, and yet no one will use her because they're not sure what to do with her power set. Isn't that fascinating that everybody wanted Brainiac? Now all of a sudden people are like, I'm not so sure. Oh, Phalanx. That's right, Matthew. Very much like the Phalanx saga over from the X-Men. That was a great comic. That was a great storyline. All right, I think we're good to go to the next one. Yeah, you want to do a Kimmel boop there, Oasis? You want to jump to Kimmel round 2? Okay. SMR Goose, what's your Halloween? Oh, your Halloween costume is... well, considering that Harley and Poison Ivy are a couple, I don't know if you want a couple's costume with your dog, but you do you. Let's see here. Everybody wants to boop. All right, let's boop to the next story. Let's boop on out of here. Hold on. Story number 2. I have a smaller light ring, so it's harder for me to see what I'm freaking looking at. Let me move this up. That's a little better. Alrighty. Story number 2. Boop. Oh, good. I almost covered Bob Iger's face, but I didn't. Okay, here we go. Chapter times. Here's my arrow. All right. Woo, what a mess. So it was announced yesterday, right after my live stream, where I said that I felt that Kimmel will be back on the air by the end of the week. He is back on the air tonight. So they announced right after the live stream, basically, that they had, after some very sensitive and deep conversations with Kimmel, that he and Disney had, thanks, Cassie, he and Disney had come to an understanding, and he was going to go back on the air this evening. And, you know, it was an interesting situation. I think that conservatives were really upset that the cancellation didn't stick after so many of the people on their side had been canceled and had stuck. And I think to those people, it felt unfair. But then also Disney, of course, wanted to end this conversation as quickly as possible because they were having a very difficult time. They were taking a lot of beating. Although I have to say, I'm sure Disney feels it's unfair because nobody has really made a big deal at all about the Ellison's capitulations to the Trump administration to get the Paramount merger approved or acquisition approved. That they promised to turn CBS into Fox News Light, and that, you know, the head of 60 Minutes resigned over them leaning on his stories. And yet nobody has said anything about that. So it's kind of crazy that, it just proves what a punching bag everybody likes to make out of Disney these days. And so why Disney has like a really hard time. Because, it's like an even worse situation, but nobody has anything to say about that. All right. So what will Kimmel say? Everybody's wondering what's going to happen when he goes on tonight. So he has a couple of options. He could apologize fully, like the Sinclair media wants him to do. I don't think he's going to do that. I would say there's almost a zero chance that he's going to do that. He could kind of apologize. He could like acknowledge it, well, no, so there's a couple. So he could a full on apology. I don't think he's going to do that. He could just apologize, in his own way. And just say, he could make one of those things where he's like, he's sorry that it was misconstrued. He could, as Maria said, he could make just a joke about it. Be like, I don't know if you guys have seen the news the last few days. You could do something like that. Or he could just simply ignore it and go on with business as usual. So we'll see what he decides to do. I think he's keenly aware that this is a crucial moment, not only for, I think, people feeling that they need to fight against the Trump administration and overreach, and also his own career. So I don't think he's going to totally duck out, but it's a very difficult scenario, particularly because Nexstar and Sinclair are not airing the show. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But, that's a problem for him. Now, will there be a huge ratings boost? We all have been talking about the fact that Jimmy Kimmel is ratings challenged. So we'll see what he decides to do. Adam Sphere, you say he could do like a take like North Korea, but the other problem that Kimmel faces, which you just reminded me of, is that everybody's already done material on this, and quite good material. Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart got to it first, then Stephen Colbert. Fallon made some good jokes about it. Then John Oliver weighed in on Sunday night. Very good material. So I think that, Kimmel, I don't know how much is left for him to be able to do at this point. So I hope his writing staff is up to the challenge. Oh, Seth Meyers also talked about it. That's interesting. But there will certainly be a lot of eyes on him this evening. Although not if you live in an area where Nexstar or Sinclair are in charge of your affiliate ABC station. Am I watching tonight, Britt? No. I couldn't care less. All right. Like, I think the fight is important and I'm interested in the results, but I don't enjoy the political aspects of late night television, maybe I'll check out and see what it says on the internet, but I just, it's going to be all over Twitter. His monologue or whatever he says will be on Twitter instantly, and social media overall. All right, so, well, this is going to be on much later in the day. This is going to be on, I think it airs at, oh, my contacts are really bothering me all of a sudden. Like at 11:30. I think this is, let me see if I can do this without the light. Not really. Okay. All right, so, we'll see what happens. So the big issue, I'm a huge SNL fan, Adam Sphere, but SNL is, I think SNL is a better quality, show. All right. So anyway, I would definitely watch SNL if it was going on. All right. So anyway, that's an interesting thing. That's a really interesting thing. I think there's a really important balance between commentary and comedy. And I think a number of the late night shows have really missed out on the comedic aspects. They have strong commentary, but I don't think they're funny enough. So yeah, so that's, I think SNL gets the balance just right. I love Weekend Update. I love their opening. I love their political opening sketches. I think they do a really good job over there. Now, we thought everything would go back to business as usual, but unfortunately, Nexstar and Sinclair Media, Nexstar is hoping to get a merger with another affiliate company approved by the FCC, and then Sinclair is, one second, just give me a minute. My contact's really bothering me. It's keeping me from being able to focus. Just give me a moment. That's better. I just took it out. All right. So I can kind of see. All right. So Nexstar and Sinclair said they will not be airing the show this evening. So they're kind of like playing chicken with ABC. And I'm sure ABC is pretty upset about this because they want this to just go away. But I do think that, it's interesting. It underscores, what is this fight really about? Some people said that Trump was going against free speech, but then people pointed out, well, how could that be the case if Disney was the one to decide when he could come back on the air? But then, Nexstar and Sinclair are not airing the show because they're upset with what Kimmel said. And they feel that it, affects, it hurt their audience. It hurt the feelings of their audience. So it's interesting. X-Men superfan Sinclair can't be sued, but ABC could threaten them and to withhold other programming from them. There are tactics that Bob Iger could use, but then he doesn't want to seem like I told you yesterday that one of the reasons that Disney has been so successful in the past is that everybody loved Disney, liberals and conservatives. They got everyone. And it's one of the reasons that they were just such a juggernaut. But they've divided their audience. And now they've managed to make, as some people said yesterday, everybody upset with them. So they're having Disney's having a difficult time. So why is this a problem that Nexstar and Sinclair won't air? Well, it's because when people buy an ad on the Jimmy Kimmel show, it's because they have it's the promise that it will play across the country when the show airs. But suddenly that ad is reaching a much smaller audience. So it's going to hurt Disney's ability, or ABC's ability, which of course is owned by Disney. It's going to affect ABC's ability to sell ads on the Jimmy Kimmel show. I want to point out to you, because nobody ever does their history. It's so frustrating. Hey, James. Back in the day, Edward R. Murrow, who was the focus of the story Good Night and Good Luck. That is the story, it's the film that George Clooney directed back in the day with David Strathairn, and then that George Clooney himself played recently on Broadway. Edward R. Murrow's show was eventually canceled because he couldn't get enough ads, because sponsors were uncomfortable with the political nature of his show. So it's the same situation. A lot of times people are like, oh, look how horrible it is today. And you're like, well, actually, it's the exact same thing that happened a long time ago. So it's interesting to see, some people were like, oh, like, why are you applying business logic to this situation? It's like, because that's what, if you want to understand why things are happening, that's why. So this also, I think, comes from the current performative nature of politics and the idea of who won. Like, it used to be back in the day that everybody was working towards a single goal, and that was making money, right? Like, what's the success? Okay. Ryan says now there's the Edward R. Murrow Award. There is, but I bet you very few people today who would know who Edward R. Murrow is, and his show still got canceled. And I think that's something that should be impressed upon Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel doesn't want to seem like he's losing either. He doesn't want to go out like this, where Trump somehow managed to get him off the air, even if it was indirect. That's not the story, or the end of his story, or the chapter in his life that he wants. I mean, that's what's happening to Colbert. Colbert can do all the victory laps that he wants, but at the end of the day, he's still being pulled off the air. So I'm glad that's not happening to Kimmel, and that he's avoiding that, at least for now. That's why it's so crucial what he says this evening. So performative politics is like a really difficult situation. And I was complaining about it yesterday as well, because, people aren't so much interested in solutions anymore as in getting a vote in the next election, or again, seeming like they won, instead of actually making real progress or change. So that's kind of a big problem here. Like, people want Kimmel to suffer, or people want Trump and the FCC to suffer. Like, that's what everybody's upset about. So I think that that's complex. That's right, Dakota. Kimmel's contract is up at the end of next year, but he's a pretty young guy. And I'm sure even if he retires from the Late Show or Late Night, I think that he would probably want to maybe have some kind of other deal with Disney. He hosts the upfronts for them every year. He's hosted the Oscars several times. There's a lot of, he gets a lot out of his relationship with Disney. Now, also, he could get a show on Hulu. Now, some of you are pointing out, some of you said yesterday, what about I think ABC will renew the show, but it might be with a new host. And I bet you they look for someone who isn't too political. I hope that late night TV doesn't totally go away. I hope it just evolves, right? But anyway, some people have said, can't they just put Kimmel on Hulu? They could eventually. Streaming is different. They sunk a lot of money into John Mulaney's late night talk show over at Netflix, but for the most part, because it doesn't sell ad dollars on it specifically, they're not going to, I told you, late night television with a live studio audience having to be written for a nightly show is extremely expensive to have that kind of staff requirements, both, in terms of resources, physical, and just showing up to work every day. Like if you watch Hacks, and she gets a late night talk show this past season, you can really see what that looks like. And Nico pointed out that John Oliver is on Max, but don't forget, John Oliver doesn't have any guests, so you don't have to have a booker, right? You don't have to deal with that. And also, John Oliver is only on once a week. John Oliver is not a nightly show. So I think that if Jimmy Kimmel was going to do something on Hulu, it would have to look a lot like David Letterman's show over on Netflix, My Next Guest Needs No Introduction. That's a very inexpensive show. It's shot on a stage. It's just got 2 chairs. But I don't think Jimmy Kimmel is known for his interviewing skills. So I don't know if that's going to work for Kimmel. But I wouldn't be surprised if after his contract is over in the next year, Kimmel goes on to do some kind of show that is like a totally different kind of show on Hulu or Disney Plus. And I think he wants to make sure, well, we'll see. But I think there's surely a part of him that would like that to be an opportunity in his future. Why does he want to burn a bridge with Disney? Because it's just it provides him so much opportunity. All right, then, I messed up. That's where the problem is. Where is this? I was wondering what was messed up. Yeah, there's chapter times that aren't there. There we go. Okay, there's one important thing I want to mention. Alrighty, so Disney, the company. Disney, of course, needs to protect their company, their shares. Bob Iger, if the stock dips too low, Bob Iger will be fired. He certainly won't get his bonus. His responsibility is to Wall Street, which I feel is not great about modern business. CEOs are no longer beholden to their employees or their customers. It's all about the mighty Wall Street and the investor. And I don't think that's great. But, Disney does have a responsibility to protect the company. They can't let Kimmel self-implode and take them down with them. It's just not a responsible thing to do. However, they also have Disney the brand, and, they can't lose everyone. They had a situation where everybody's now upset with them over the past few days, right? They had conservatives already still upset with them over their content and the changes at the company. And also because they've been made the villain by the Republicans for a very long time. And then also now everyone on the left was starting to get very upset with them. So they were like, who's going to go see our movies and go to our parks and watch our stuff? They were very nervous about it. So they have to protect the brand as well. Bob Iger is like a pretty cool cucumber. He says some horrible things. Like the stuff that he said during the strike was pretty awful, about, starving writers out and not having realistic demands. That was pretty bad. But, Bob Iger's a pretty genial guy. He's, unlike Bob Chapek, he's well liked. He's really testing that. But I suspect he'll be okay. But let's see how he handles the next couple of things, because this just really is a mess. And then here's another thing that I don't think a lot of people are focusing on. I think Disney is also trying to protect themselves from a potential Jimmy Kimmel lawsuit. There is a chance, because Jimmy Kimmel was meeting with his lawyers right away, that Kimmel could sue Disney for causing damage to Kimmel's image and career, going against his contract, silencing him. I think that Disney's like, wait a minute, are we going to get sued? So I think that, while they put Kimmel on hold to protect themselves and Kimmel from himself, they can't do that for too long, because it's obviously Kimmel doesn't want them to do that. So what they need to do is, I think this is a part of this, to be honest with you, I think Disney is putting him back on the air so that they in court can show that they did not hold Kimmel back and that they did eventually support him. So no matter if Kimmel, so again, just like I said yesterday, Kimmel being taken off the air was because Kimmel refused to lower the temperature. Again, Disney didn't ask for him to apologize. They just wanted him to lower the temperature and felt that the remarks that he had planned were going to raise the temperature. So now, though, I think Disney's like, uh-oh, is he going to sue us? So, and also, we've certainly lost the court of public opinion. So even if we're technically right on paper, there's a very good chance that a judge or a jury would say, we don't care, we're going to send a message through you, right? So I think they're like, hey, let's just put him back on the air, and either he solves his own problem, right? Or he blows up in his own face, and then it's his own fault. So I think that's what Disney has decided to do. And then if he implodes and Sinclair and Nexstar won't continue to air his show, then that's Kimmel's fault, not Disney's. And they can say in court that they tried everything that they could to keep him on the air and give him the benefit of the doubt. But he just would not, he cost them too many advertisers. So they couldn't keep him on the air. So, that's why what Kimmel says tonight is just so important. Not only for the temperature in the country, but also for his own future and his own career. So it is pretty evil. So I think, I know I've seen a lot of Blue Prada keep saying that Kimmel said nothing wrong. I saw a good piece in the Hollywood Reporter that said that, if your comments are misconstrued, that responsibility falls on you, which is just like, to flip the script. Like when everyone said that Elon Musk did that really horrible salute and he insisted he didn't. And everyone said, well, even if you say that you didn't, it's on you that that's what it looked like. And so I think, again, flipping it around, even if Kimmel didn't say what he's being accused of, it came across that way, that he did. And the thing that people are upset about is what he said about the shooter being MAGA. And so that's what people are very upset about. Hey, Elpidio, thank you very much. And that is the issue, right? So yeah. So I don't want to get involved. I don't want to comment on it. I think we'll see how it all plays out in that investigation and in court. And that's why I said, Kahiri says that Trump has said worse. Yeah, but why on earth would you model yourself after that individual, right? And Trump doesn't work for anybody, right? Well, I mean, and Trump, the people that Trump does work for, his base, are very happy with what he says. Like, that's the thing, I don't think Disney had a single issue until the affiliates started to threaten the situation. That's kind of like what happened. So what did Maria say? Communication is more about what is received than what is said. That is very well said, Maria, which is great because you're talking about communication. And Cam says, that's true. I do think something should be done about Fox reporters, but that's on Democratic leadership for not doing something about Fox when they could have. So that's what I think is going on with Kimmel, and we'll see what he does tonight. I hope he realizes what the stakes are. I hope he realizes that Disney has kind of set a trap for him. So we better be really careful. So anybody have any questions or comments about this story? Dakota says Trump is supposed to work for the country. Well, that's tricky, Dakota, because the majority of the country did vote for him, even if it was by slim margins, and a lot of them are happy. Let's see, Luke. I wish that he was an upstanding individual. Barack Obama, a lot of people say bad stuff about Barack Obama, and I don't think he never gets credit for how he was a uniter. A lot of people wanted Barack Obama to be divisive, but Barack Obama insisted that he was the president for everyone, even if they didn't want him to be. And that was one of the great things about him as a leader. He just was a wonderful president. Let's see here. The trap, somebody asked me what the trap is, Lucas. The trap that Disney has set is that they want to make Kimmel responsible for his own downfall. They don't want him to be able to say that they caused his downfall. That is what Disney is setting up because they don't want to get sued. Let's see here. Concepcion says, what do you think was the deciding factor to bring Kimmel back? The 400 celebrities signing the petition or multiple consumers canceling Disney Plus? Dory, I'll go back in a second and look at your chat here. Let me see. I don't really know specifically what it is. You know, the stock didn't drop that much. I think it's everything. I think that they just don't want this conversation to continue, you know, and they don't want to get sued by Kimmel. So I think right now in a sea of not great choices, I think Disney so far is navigating this well. But now, as I said, the trap is they've just totally put the ball in Kimmel's court. It's now, everything is up to Kimmel now. And so that's why what he says tonight is so important. And if I were Kimmel, I wouldn't directly reach out to Nexstar and Sinclair. But he should have a representative reaching out to Nexstar and Sinclair and saying, this is ridiculous. We're just hurting each other. So what's it going to take to get me back on the air? And don't give me that ridiculous, you know, public apology and donation. You know, like, give me a real request that can be done. You know, even if it's having maybe more conservative guests on the show, you know, like, but you can still ask them hard questions, you know, like behind the scenes, they should be trying to get a deal done because it's in Kimmel's best interest for Nexstar and Sinclair to air his show. I mean, he can fight the good fight, but if they won't air his show, he'll be pulled off of it. And that is not great for him. All right, so Dory does voices says, Grace, do you feel like Disney is being forced to choose their identity? Can they even be neutral in this climate? Disney can be neutral in this climate because they are an entertainment company. They are not a news organization or politicians. They have every ability to be neutral. And I think that what gets them in trouble is poor storytelling and that they, because people aren't even happy with the stories that are supposed to, like the people they're trying to represent aren't even happy with the representation that Disney is delivering. And that's really a problem. I think that, you know, I think Disney could do this, but it's very tricky. And I think they don't have the current leadership that would help them to do it. Let's see here. That's funny, Jorge. Obama's brown, light tan suit was beautiful. Let's see. James says he heard that Kimmel's contract is expiring in January. Do we expect big changes then? Well, it's impossible to tell until we see what he does tonight. I think that if I had to guess, as of right now, that he would leave the show on his own terms and he would get some kind of show with Disney on Disney Plus or Hulu that was more of something else, like just the next chapter in his career, and that where he would have more freedom because they wouldn't have to pay as much to make the show. So yeah, and then also they wouldn't be able, and I don't want to see late night totally die. I would like to see it reinvented. So maybe they'll give the job to somebody else. Heather says, Trump whines and everybody jumps to bow. That isn't freedom. I understand where you're coming from, but I think that it's more complex and nuanced than that. Again, as I said yesterday, you have a very difficult situation where Trump, because of the Republican Party and therefore Trump, control everything. The balance of power has been obliterated. America has always succeeded because of a balance of power and checks and balances. That's out the window because voters gave the Republicans carte blanche control over the presidency, the judicial branch, the Senate and the House. That's really bad. And so it's not the way it's supposed to be. So that's why we're in the situation that we're in. Thanks, you Optimus Prime Ribs. I love your name. And thanks. I'm glad you like my shirt. Ryan says, should Disney take some kind of note from Universal? They don't seem to upset people. Well, that's because nobody ever, I think Universal just is still, for all their success, just still not the level of Disney. Disney has become, for better or worse, a part of people's lives. And people, Disney is just an everyday thing for them. It's a world they escape into or have escaped into. And that's just not the same for anybody else. And what has been Disney's secret weapon, well, not so secret, has become a disadvantage to them. Thanks, MK. All right. And that's right, Just Blaze Disney. Universal not only has a different audience, but they have different expectations. Oh, that's a good point. Let me just say this one last thing before we go on to the next story. Back when Disney came about, Disney helped to define Americana. When people talk about the heyday of America, which a lot of people actually didn't enjoy, but that was created. In some ways, that's an illusion that actually never existed. But Disney is largely responsible for creating that illusion and selling that illusion. So Disney helped to shape the world. But there were two very interesting things that happened. Conservatives flocked to that, but then also very progressive people flocked to the artistic aspect of Disney and the power that Disney, although I have to tell you, Walt Disney's been stealing ideas the whole time he was alive. I didn't even know that until recently. I watched a behind the scenes thing about Lady and the Tramp, and I was very sad to hear that he stole the idea from one of his employees for that and never credited them because he wanted everything to be from Walt. And I thought that was a very weak thing to do because there's nothing wrong with the ability to discover talent within your own ranks. Like he still would have found the idea and made it happen. Uncle Walt. I really don't like taking ideas from other people. As a creative myself, I feel that's like just really taboo. But yes, no other movie studio has created the image of American life like Disney has. And so that is what I think has that is what's creating the current division, is what is that? What is the life that Disney described, Can it evolve, or do some people want it to stay what it was? And if can it be inclusive without changing? Very complex situation. Thanks, Greg. And Steven says that he thinks that podcasts have hurt late night. Well, I think what hurts late night is the lack of the monologue. Some of you said that there are monologues. There are still monologues, but they're not good. And then also I think that the celebrity interviews feel very canned. They don't feel authentic. Oh, thanks, Lucas. That's very sweet of you to say. I also want to point out, by the way, on a side note, that a lot of the people who helped Disney to create this life and this illusion were LGBTQ. But were closeted back in the day. And then also, not closeted, but, for instance, Howard Ashman. The Disney Renaissance never would have happened if not for Howard Ashman, who, of course, is a LGBTQ icon. Tragically passed away. And that from AIDS. And that's like the big thing, like conservatives want Disneyana to stay the way it was. And I think that LGBTQ community feel that's hypocritical because it wouldn't exist without them. That's really interesting, isn't it? That this conservative utopia wouldn't exist without the LGBTQ people who created it. That to me is really interesting. And just goes to show, by the way, that we're more alike than we think. Because, conservatives are enjoying a utopia that LGBTQ people created. And women. That's right, Just Blaze Disney. And women. Although Disney was a little sexist. But it's okay. I mean, he was a product of the times. I forgive him for some of his foibles, and some I just have to look past. I still do have a lot of respect for what he built. But I do think it needs to evolve. Okay. Ready? I don't watch Bill Maher. Who asked me that? Reese? I see Bill Maher on Twitter and stuff. I see his comments. I'm not a huge Bill Maher fan. Okay. Story number 3. Boopity boop boop. Boom, baby. All right. Okay. So here's like a very non-political story. All right. Christopher Nolan, he has been elected the DGA president, aka the Directors Guild of America. Now, unbeknownst to all of us, he's been doing union work for quite some time, it seems, and he has long been on committees and helping the DGA, and he decided he'd like to run it. And he ran unopposed and has now been elected the head of the Directors Guild. And I think it's shocking that this is during the peak of his career. When the heck does he have time to run a guild? I mean, it seemed to be a full-time thing for Fran Drescher, right? You would think usually the head of a guild would be someone who was later on in their career and had a lot of free time. But no, Nolan, I think it's probably because he really feels there's things that he needs to do, which is why I think makes him so scary as the head of the DGA to the studios. If I were the studios, I'd be nervous about this election. I'd be like, so Chris, what do you plan to do? I'd be like, I better invite him to lunch before somebody else does. Okay, so he has a long laundry list of enemies. Nolan, he is one of the most anti-streaming directors out there. He hates streaming. He hates it. He split up with Warner Brothers entirely because of their pandemic plan to launch movies on Max and theaters at the same time. It was during the freaking pandemic. He got so upset about it, he left the studio that made him. That's how upset he was. They wrote him a big check to make up for his losses on Tenet. And he was like, thank you, like a boss. He pocketed it and still didn't go back to them. Although, to Universal's credit, where he ended up, they did finally win him an Oscar. But then, yeah, he also is very upset with the studios, particularly Warner Brothers. Oh, he hates Warner Brothers with a passion. Not only because they wanted to put his movie on streaming and couldn't win him an Oscar, but after he left, they stuck Barbie on his release date for Oppenheimer. And he really didn't like that. Remember, he refused to acknowledge Barbie? He never acknowledged Barbie. He hasn't acknowledged Barbie to this day, even though he made close to $1 billion and he won the Oscar finally. So it's like, why can't you just say something nice about Barbie, man? I do think that Barbie elevated Oppenheimer, for sure. But he just was so upset about it. So yeah, he's a pretty aggressive dude. But I think there was, without a doubt, he's had a huge effect on directors. So it's what I like to call the Nolan effect. He's one of the few superstar directors out there, very much like Steven Spielberg. In fact, I think he is the new Steven Spielberg, where people used to just go see a movie because of Steven Spielberg. You know, he's a household name, which is rare for directors. But he's helping other directors. Well, that's what's so interesting. Steven Spielberg, he helped a few people like Robert Zemeckis, but I think he helped them usually by producing their films, whereas Christopher Nolan kind of mentors other directors. Like, he has no stake in their movies. Like, Steven Spielberg never helped a director that he wasn't producing the film, so he would make a substantial amount of money off of it. But Christopher Nolan's like, yeah, let's give you some advice. Come on over, man. So he is really helping to and he's coming up with ideas that keep people coming back to the theater. 70 millimeter. That's all Nolan, baby. He's doing 70 millimeter. Oh, bye, Alexander. He's doing 70 millimeter films, which is getting people to feel they need to go to the theater, right? I didn't put him down here, but Paul Thomas Anderson is doing this exact playbook for One Battle After Another. And then also IMAX. He's really pioneering IMAX. He's not only making it, you know, like Steven Spielberg really popularized films in general and created the blockbuster and commercial filmmaking. 70 millimeter, Maria, is like a very large film frame that has better depth and better picture, and it's projected, and it's a better experience instead of projection. You know, like a digital projection. You know, 70 millimeter is like this beautiful cinematic filmic experience that you can still have. But Nolan has created a world of cinephiles where people appreciate the intellectual qualities of film and the history of film. And that's very different than when Spielberg did, right? But it's great. Spielberg already did what he was doing. And James Cameron, that's right, Adam Sphere. But I think that Christopher Nolan is an evolution of that, which is really great. And also, Christopher Nolan pushed IMAX. He challenged them to make a camera small enough and quiet enough that he could film an entire movie in IMAX, which he has finally done with The Odyssey. And that's all Nolan. And other filmmakers are going to start to be able to use that technology, but Nolan gets first dibs because it was his request that IMAX develop it. And that's going to, his films have made IMAX so, and his influence have made IMAX so popular that the movie theater companies are trying to come up with an alternative to IMAX because there's such demand from audiences to see movies in that format, and IMAX takes some of the ticket sale money. And movie theaters don't want to give any of the money away to a third party. But that's the effect of Nolan. Now, two filmmakers that he's influenced for sure are Denis Villeneuve, who he actually helped campaign for Best Director for Dune Part 2. And then also Ryan Coogler. He very much sat with Coogler, and Coogler picked his brain about how to make Sinners an event. And he did. It succeeded. And Dune 2 was an event. And also, you can't underestimate what, that's funny, Britt. It is very Ken energy. They're all holding hands, saying that's okay. And I think that Nolan changed the comic book genre, and made people take it seriously. He has had a tremendous effect on filmmakers and the profession. And if he can spread his influence and ideas even further than he already has as the president of the DGA, this could be huge. And I think the DGA has some big battles coming up with AI and streaming, etc. And Nolan is a heavyweight because he believes very passionately in his things. And also he's so successful that he doesn't have to worry about any fallout. Nolan's at the point in his career where he's untouchable. He could self-distribute and self-finance at this point. He doesn't even need a studio if he didn't want it. He's that powerful. And that's where Steven Spielberg eventually got. And Steven Spielberg is very much a part of Universal. He gets forever, I think, 10% of Universal Studios theme park entrance tickets because he not only helped to develop the parks, but that was part of the deal for him lending his name to the parks. When they first opened Universal Studios theme parks, they were able to say that Steven Spielberg helped develop them, and that was a selling point. And in exchange for using his name, he negotiated 10%. I think maybe it's 10, maybe it might be a little less, but he has a percentage of Universal theme park entrance fees forever. So that's pretty good. Very, very clever. That's right. Christopher Nolan did try to help Zack Snyder, but that did not work out. All right, does anybody have any questions or comments about this story? And then we'll get to the Q&A. That's right, Kay Walton. Steven Spielberg does produce almost every Universal movie. He's in there, man. Nico, I think that IMAX does need to build more screens. It's ridiculous. There's only one proper IMAX in the whole city, Lincoln Square, and it books out crazy. Like if you don't book those tickets right away, you can't go. Adam Sphere says they don't think anyone will ever self-sacrifice finance again after Megalopolis. Well, I think they will. I mean, I think, you got to still make sound business decisions. Oliver says Nolan makes normies feel like cinephiles. Don't come for me, Nolan bros. Well, I think he not only makes them feel like cinephiles, but I think he does educate them. So I think he's not going to do everything for you, but I think the fact that he just creates an interest in being a cinephile is really great. Peter says, how big do you think the Odyssey is going to be? I'm not sure. I think there will be a certain contingent that's very excited about the movie because it's Christopher Nolan and because of the material. But I do think it might be a little bit of a risk not to do a traditional sword and sandal pick. To go for like this very dreary look for the film, at least what we've seen so far. Although I will say when I saw the trailer on the big screen, it looked beautiful. I mean, the shots were incredible. To see like some of the chariots like racing, it was very quick, but I was like, that looks pretty good. X-Men Superfan says, are you a little bit happy that he hired Elliot Page for the Odyssey? I thought it was a really nice thing to do. That is lovely. I'd forgotten that he'd done that. I'll be curious to see how he uses Page. I hope that the film doesn't have an issue because of that. Hey, Wanda's attorney, I'm glad you made it. Benjamin says, is there Nolan money without Barbie? That'll be the test of the Odyssey. Right? Does it make as much as Oppenheimer without Barbie or a Barbie-like movie to propel it? If only The Devil Wears Prada 2 had opened the same day. Maybe that could have recreated that event. Disney doesn't have the guts to do it. Again, Margot Robbie and Greta Gerwig don't get the credit for moving on Nolan like that. Like a boss. Sarah, he can't write women at all. Christopher Nolan cannot write women. He's horrible at it. I think it's crazy that considering that his wife is so much involved in his projects. Anne Hathaway is in both those movies. That's right, Blue Prada. That the female roles aren't better written. But I got to tell you, it ain't hurting him. It ain't hurting him. And let's see how he does with The Odyssey. I think this is his biggest female cast that he's ever had. Can every single female character in the movie be a miss? I think that would be impossible. At least I would hope so. Eric says, The Odyssey was not something I read in school, but watching the trailer transporting me to 10th grade English class. And you hated 10th grade English class. Ah, you'll like it. You'll like it. Britt says, put Wuthering Heights on the date. That's funny. But they're going for 50 Shades. Oh, that's a good point, Lloyd. Yeah, I bet you James Cameron does get money forever for the Avatar land. But then he's only getting Animal Kingdom entrance fees. And I don't know how big those are. Animal Kingdom shade. Let's see. They need to add more rides to that park. Like, it was so depressing. If you look at the way Dinosaur looks right now, to get to that ride, to get to that attraction, because they're destroying the rest of the dinosaur land to build the America's land, which is going to be amazing. That's going to be such a great, it's going to put Animal Kingdom finally on the map as a theme park. But right now, it's just walking through a freaking construction zone. But they have to keep Dinosaur open because there's nothing to ride in the park, basically. They just don't have enough attractions. Dancing Dog 60 says, perhaps Nolan can help build a group of filmmakers who define this era the way Spielberg, Lucas. But I don't think you can combine those, because I don't think Spielberg and Lucas were at all responsible for Bogdanovich or Coppola. Thanks, John. That's very sweet of you to say. I would like to see more women and directors of color. I mean, that's why I'm really hoping for Ryan Coogler to win Best Director this year. I can't believe there's never been a black winner for Best Director. That to me is just absolutely shocking, considering how long the Oscars have been around and how many great black directors that there are. Yeah, Reese, I'm glad to hear you say it too. I hated Emily Blunt's role in Oppenheimer. All right, so let's go to the Ask Me Anything portion, because we're really going long here. I'm glad we're having such a good time talking. All right, 10 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes, because we're already really over on the stream. All right, so 5-minute Q&A. Let's see here. Away says, had COVID all week. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You're starting your occupational therapy course at university tomorrow. Any tips on taking in lectures? Been too ill to prepare. I just make sure you be careful where you're sitting. There are some classes I didn't do well in, and I would always try and sit in the front. And then I remember for my math class, I fell asleep in the front row, right in front of the teacher. So that was bad. So be careful. I wanted to show that I was working really hard and taking the class seriously, but that really backfired. Let's see here. Thanks, Jesus. Hey, Shaw. I appreciate that. Jonathan, I'm nervous about Netflix potentially purchasing Warner Brothers because they aren't in the theatrical space at all. Maybe this is a way for them to get in the theatrical space. I'm just not sure what they're trying to do with it. Art Lover says, wondering how you feel about actresses and plastic surgery. I don't want to comment on women's bodies and stuff like that. I feel like plastic surgery is a really slippery slope. And I think you can spot it on some actresses, and that's all I'll say. I think it's sad, that younger and younger women in the industry are feeling that they need to have plastic surgery. And I think you should always be careful. I think less is always more, because you can't undo it. I mean, once they mess up, it's over, So I think it's really unfortunate. Although I have to say, Kris Jenner looks freaking amazing. She looks like she went in a time machine. I think she and Brad Pitt have the same plastic surgeon. Although I don't think he did as good a job on Brad Pitt. He doesn't look like he went in a time machine. Angela, I hear that the Wicked trailer is dropping at 11 a.m., which is when they dropped the teaser today. So the teaser for the final trailer. So I think it's 11 a.m. Let's see here. Faye says, do you think there are any billion-dollar films left this year? I still have my fingers crossed for Wicked. I don't think Wicked will make $1 billion. But I think that Zootopia might make $1 billion. And I think obviously Avatar 3 might make $1 billion. I think those are the only billion-dollar films left. Potential billion-dollar films left. And they're both from Disney, by the way. And that would give Disney the only billion-dollar films of the year. All three. They always win in the end, despite everybody getting upset with them. Blue Prada says, although I strongly disagree with you on Kimmel, I do so respectfully. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that, Blue Prada. We can certainly disagree. And I'm glad that we can both consider what the other is saying. Dream says, have you watched The Girlfriend on Prime with Robin Wright? I did watch one episode, and I think it's interesting that you say that it's a great study in perspective, because I decided to stop watching it. I watched episode 2. I was at a friend's house and I hadn't seen the first episode and they'd already started the show. So I was like, well, okay, I'll watch the second episode with you. Eric, I'm so glad you're finally a member. I love it. But I thought that there was a reveal about the Olivia Cooke character that blindsided me, because there was not even a hint of it in her own perspective. And that, to me, maybe she's nuts, but I didn't think that was fair. I thought that was sloppy and unearned. Lucas, I love the studio. I love the studio so much. Eddie Wu says, any awards contenders coming out that you're particularly excited for? I'm hoping to see one battle after another on Thursday. I'm very excited for Frankenstein from Netflix, even though it didn't get the greatest reviews at the film festival circuit. That, to me, I think is the film I'm the most excited to see next. And X-Men Superfan says, do you think Amanda Waller or G.I. Robot or The Bride will appear in the next Peacemaker episode? I really feel good about the Creature Commandos guess. So let's see, though. Let's see what happens. And then Dance to Dog 60 says, can't theater chains build their own versions of an event format? Yes, that's what they're trying to do exactly. Jonathan, I'm so glad you started Alien Earth and you like it. We need all the fans we can get on that show. James is loving Alien Earth. Oh, I'm so happy. And thank you for another compliment on the blouse, Baba Juice. Let's see here. Jonathan says, do you have any Latin American favorite films? I like The Orphanage by J.A. Bayona. And I also really liked Roma, when Netflix was just getting started with prestige films. I thought that was a nice movie. Ryan says, thoughts on the Apple TV Savant series put on hold? It's not coming out? Isn't it supposed to drop on Friday? I didn't even see that story. Babette, no, I'm not. I'm not watching Kamala Harris on The View. I don't watch The View. And then Paul says, what do you think of the Absolute Batman Joker? Mixed feelings on it, but I'll see what they're cooking. Let me see. I love that comic, so I'll continue to read it. It's nuts, but it's selling like crazy. Evan92 says, hi, Grace. Thank you always for terrific content. Thank you, and I'm glad you like this this background for now. And let's see here. Mystic says, do you think any TV or theatrical movies have worked? I'm nervous for Airbender. I'm very excited for Airbender because of how well anime is doing. Sarah, I am excited also for Jay Kelly, kind of, right? And then House of Dynamite, I don't know, that seems maybe a little too depressing for me. I think that Sarah and Netflix will campaign for all three of them to start, and then they'll see which ones are getting the most traction, and then they'll start to let some fall away. X-Men Superfan says, what do you think is the best Marilyn Monroe comedy? Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Some Like It Hot, or How to Marry a Millionaire? I have a real sentimental value. I really like How to Marry a Millionaire. It takes place in New York City. It's a gorgeous Technicolor movie so is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, but How to Marry a Millionaire is by far my favorite. However, I think Some Like It Hot is an amazing movie, and it's fascinating how modern it is. It's responsible for destroying the production code in Hollywood. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for today's live stream. I had a great time talking to you. There will be one more live stream this week for sure. I might do a live breakdown of the Wicked trailer tomorrow. which wouldn't count as the live stream of the week. But we're having a great week, lots of videos, and I'll see you soon. All right, everybody.